you guys are looking at me, I'm Yeshua talking, you guys are looking at me like I'm blasphemous for healing someone on the Sabbath day. So these are just examples where Yeshua was reminding them, look, you guys in your effort to keep the laws of God have now conflated all of your traditions with God's commandments and your halakha and your minutia, and now people can't even see mercy anymore. It's entirely a legalistic enterprise. You've hijacked the words of God and turned them into your own program, and it's all bad, right? It's a mess. And so Jesus came to kind of break through and cut through all those calloused opinions about the Torah and to bring the true and pure mercy and grace that's actually built into the text, bring that back to the forefront and show the people that the Torah is a merciful document. It's through and through. It has grace and mercy. And I can show you how to walk it out, filled by the Spirit, Yeshua basically is saying. So he's seeking his disciples. And who's he going to pick? Is he going to pick people who have already kind of been sort of, and I'm filling in these words, okay? These are not what Tim Hegg says. People who've already been sort of kind of brainwashed by the religious authorities of their day? Or is Yeshua going to look for people who are basically newbies, right? So let's keep listening to Tim Hegg. Let's go for another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll call it quits. Tim says, rather than going the way that the rabbis would normally do it, Yeshua did something slightly different. Rather, Tim says, Yeshua, desired to teach his disciples the Torah as God intended it to be understood and obeyed, in obedience that would be governed by mercy towards one's fellow man, as befitting those who had themselves experienced the mercy of God, right? Let me read that last sentence again. As befitting those who themselves had experienced the mercy of God. Make sense? You've got to view Torah through the lens of, how should I treat my neighbor? Is that the way I want to be treated, right? It's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Paraphrased, of course. And this is in accord with the two greatest commandments that Yeshua reminded us about, right? Love God, love your neighbor. So when we're seeking to keep Torah, Yeshua's challenge to the religious leaders so often was, you guys are asking them to do impossible things, and you yourselves are not even willing to lift your finger to help them out when they're struggling, right? You help them out with their load, right? Shame on you. That's hypocrisy. Tim concludes, he says, to do this required having disciples, right? To go the opposite way that disciples were normally chosen in that day. To do this required having disciples that were unencumbered by rabbinic tradition and were therefore new wineskins, quote unquote, able to receive this reclamation of Torah as Yeshua would teach it both in word and in deed. And so, in case you didn't catch it, the application or translation that Tim Hegg is supplying, again, this is extra because Jesus didn't give us all these, but it is entirely compatible and agrees in theology with the historical way that Jewish leaders would pick disciples, and it's in accordance with the message that Yeshua was bringing and the overall thrust of returning people back to the pure understanding of God's words rather than simply going along with the legalistic misunderstandings that had crept up in Yeshua's day. So in conclusion to this section, what I'm saying is that this interpretation by Tim Hegg fits better than the allegorical historical interpretation of Jesus has come to do away with the old traditional Jewish way of approaching God and introduce this brand new way of keeping our relationship with God by just loving everybody, smoothing everything out, washing everything over with New Covenant, New Testament theology, faith and love and all of that that tends to kind of be overemphasized. It's Tim Hegg's explanation is a little bit more compatible, a little bit more acceptable with the overall thrust of not only what Yeshua taught, but what Paul would later on go on to teach in his own messages as well, which is an entirely pro-Torah perspective, contrary to what historic Christianity might believe Paul is teaching. But that's going to do it for tonight's this first segment on in our live studies Are Judaism and Christianity incompatible with one another? We'll pick this up again, not next week. Very important. Listen, we're not meeting next week because we're still right in the middle of the fall feasts. By the time you're listening to this study, either Yom Kippur is right around the corner or it just happened this week. And so we're turning right into the final festivals of the fall feasts, Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles. So no meeting next week, but we will meet the week after that. So we'll pick this up again in 2 weeks, okay? But that'll do it for Judaism v. Christianity.